What's going on, everybody? We're back in the shed for another Shed Sessions installational video. So in the suspension video that we did recently, I showed you that the brake lines were stretching out way too far. Now on the road, that's perfectly fine because the diff's not going to move down too much, but as soon as we get off-road and start hitting off-road tracks with a suspension lift, those brake lines are going to stretch down and they're going to break. So we need to put a set of extended brake lines in to suit the suspension lift that you've done to your vehicle. Brake lines that I've got in from Mark's four-wheel drive. So these are a complete braided brake line set. Now you can get rubber hoses, these ones here. Now these are like the rubber that you find on a factory line, so there's nothing wrong with that. This is just a longer line that's suited for a lifted vehicle in rubber. Now this one over here is a braid. This is essentially a stronger line. So the difference between braid and rubber is the actual way that they're manufactured and the material that it's made from. So inside this braided line, it's got a whole bunch of metal material that's woven and a few different layers, so it's extremely strong, and it also means that they don't stretch. So with the rubber lines, they aren't as strong, so when you put your foot on the pedal, all that braking pressure has to go somewhere. Now most of it goes to the caliper and that's what operates your brakes, but a lot of it gets soaked up from the rubber lines because the rubber lines will expand and stretch. So with a braided line, they're going to hold the shape a lot better and they're not going to stretch, meaning that a lot more braking pressure is being sent down to your brake calipers and a better braking overall. Now, in my case, I've done a long travel lift kit, which means that my diff can travel really far down into ruts and things like that. So the chassis here and the diffs here, when it travels down, it's going to be dropping away from the chassis. So your brake lines are mounted to your chassis and your diff. So you can imagine they're going to get stretched. Now, my factory ones are extremely stretched out at full travel and they were going to break off-road. Whether it's rubber or metal braid, you need to put extended brake lines on your lifted vehicle, guys. So let's go ahead and start showing you how to do start to finish installation process on an NP300 brake line kit. I'm going to show you how to install them and also how to bleed the brakes. So we're going to cover everything, guys, so you can tackle this one at home.
This is my bad side. Just do this.
So I've just jacked the back of the car up here and I've put some jack stands underneath the chassis. What I'm going to do for this video is take this wheel off so that I can get a better camera angle in there to show you guys what I'm doing. Now you don't have to take the wheel off to do this at home. It does give you a little bit more room to get in from the side, so you can do that if you want to. But jacking the car up and putting some jack stands underneath there will give you a little bit more room to work underneath the back of the vehicle. Okay guys, so it's a little bit cramped under the car here, but I'm going to do my best to explain what's going on. So we're starting on the back driver's side brake line. Now you're going to need to grab a few tools. So first things first, there's two fittings on each brake line that we need to remove or undo so that we can take the brake line out. Now they are a 10mm brake fitting. You can use a normal 10mm open-ended spanner if you like, but the proper tool is this one here. This is a brake tool with a more closed end on it, which means it gets a better grip on the fitting and less chance to strip it, because they do like to strip these brake fittings. Now that's going to make your job a lot easier. You also need to grab a set of pliers or a visor or grip, something like this, so that we can get the brake tab that's holding the brake line in off, so that we can remove it out. And you need to grab your brake line as well. So this one here is labelled right rear caliper. So that's the right one for the driver's side, so we need to have that at the ready, so when we pull this out, we can do a quick change and put it back in place. Also grab some rags as well, in case you need to mop up any brake fluid, and a drip tray underneath it all, so you can catch any excess fluid that drips out. So that's about the amount of brake fluid that you can expect to be dripping out of the brake line once you crack the fitting off there. So it's not a heap, but it is constantly dripping, so just make sure you have some sort of drip tray underneath it and some rags at the ready as well, guys. So that's the bottom one done. So now let's go ahead and get the top fitting undone next. So that's the first brake line out of the car. That's this one here. Now if you compare it to the new one that we've got, you can see that there is quite a bit of difference in length between the two. So all we need to do to get the new brake line onto the vehicle is do the exact reversal of what we've done to take this one out to put this one back in. Okay, so you might have noticed when I was putting that fitting on there, I started it by hand. Now you guys know that I like to start all bolts by hand if I can, because you run less risk of stripping the thread that way. Now it's exactly the same with these braid fittings. The threads on them are extremely fine and can be threaded extremely easily. You can really do yourself some damage there. And if you strip the thread on one of these guys, it means that you're not going to be able to finish the job and your car's going to be stationary until you can get a replacement fitting. Absolute pain in the ass. Start every thread by hand if you can help it. Now, the other thing you might have noticed is there was a direction in which the braided brake line wanted to run. Now you can see this one's got a bit of a curvature to it, which is quite natural for it to run in. If I flip it over the other way and try and curve it like this, you can see that it's really forcing the braid in a direction it doesn't want to go in. So make sure you check how it's wanting to run and make sure you put it in that way. Okay, so once the fittings are done up by hand, go ahead and grab your clips and put them back on where they came from. Okay, so that's the brake line now on. So as you can see, it's running nice and comfortably. And when the diff drops down, it's going to stretch or lengthen out in the correct direction. Now, those fittings aren't done up tight just yet, so I've just done them up hand tight, got everything sitting comfortable. So now that we've done and we've got all the clips back on here, we can go ahead and tighten up these fittings. Okay, so that feels good there. Don't over tighten these fittings, guys. They are, as I said, a very fine thread, so you can run the risk of over tightening them and pulling the thread out, so stripping the thread. So make sure you just do them up till they feel firm and then just go another half a turn from there and that will be enough. Grab yourself some brake cleaner and just spray the fitting area on both top and bottom. And once you've done that, just give it a spray down or a wipe down. Because brake fluid is extremely corrosive, guys, so you don't want to have it sitting on any of your metal components or your rubber components around this area. You want to make sure that you clean down the area thoroughly and get the brake fluid off any parts that it's fallen onto. Same thing goes for, I should be wearing gloves, guys, so if you have some gloves, make sure that you put them on because it's not good to get on your skin. I just don't have any that I can wear, so I've just been washing my hands as much as I can during this process. Alright guys, so that is the driver's side rear brake line now done, complete. Move on to the passenger side, do exactly the same thing because the brake lines are identical on either side of the vehicle on this one, so exact same fittings, exact same process. Okay, so that's the passenger side rear line now out. So again, you can see it's a massive difference in length. Now, I will make a mention, guys, both fittings on either end of these are exactly the same. So it doesn't really matter which way you put it up, but I've just put the sticker side of these lines up to facing towards the top. And there's the clips, 2 clips, same as the other side. Rightio guys, so that is the back end now done. Now we're on to the front end. So we're on the driver's side of the car here. This is the assembly up the front and this is the brake line here. Now I've got the vehicle up on jack stands. Both wheels are off the ground, so there's nothing touching. So this is at full droop as it sits here. So that's basically as stretched as a line will be, which is basically under tension. So it's being pulled on right now, which isn't good. So if you're off-road, that's exactly what would happen at full droop like it is now. It'd be stretched. So what we need to do is grab your replacement brake line and put it in place of this one. So the front end's slightly different to the rear. We've got a fitting up the top here like the rear, but down the bottom we've actually got a banjo fitting with a bolt going through it and 2 copper washers. So that one's a little bit different, but still very easy to do. So let's start with getting the top off and then get the banjo fitting on the bottom off and we'll replace it with a braided brake line. Rightio, so that's the front brake line now off. So that's the original, this is the new one. Now take note of the banjo orientation here. So they are a certain orientation. We need to make sure when we put it back on the vehicle that it goes back on the same way. Now there is some copper washers on the banjo fitting here, on the original banjo fitting. We're not going to be reusing those. They are a one-use item. So there is replacement banjo copper washers in the kit that we got. Now we will reuse the banjo bolt though. So that's the original one. We do reuse that. One goes on that side and then the other one goes on after we put the fitting back on with a new brake line. So let's install this back into the vehicle now, making sure we get the orientation of these fittings correct and the curvature of the line is comfortable. Put it all together like that and just screw it up by hand. Okay, now with the top piece, basically just like the rear fittings, just start the thread by hand, which in some of these awkward positions is easier said than done. Okay, that's pretty good there. So we're going to want this to sit in that orientation. Now grab your clip that you took off. I'm just going to put that one back on again. So as you can see, we just turned the steering left to right. So the steering knuckle here has plenty of clearance against the brake line. It's not going to have any issues there fouling on it, so that's fine. And you can see there's a nice curvature here to the brake line itself. It's definitely not stretched out anymore. So all we need to do now is just go ahead and tighten up the top fitting and tighten up the bottom banjo bolt. And that's the driver's side front done. We need to do the exact same thing on the passenger side. It's exactly the same process.
Making?
A catch for the brake fluid to go into. So the almighty Powerade bottle, the bottle of many uses, can also be used as a brake fluid catch.
What other uses does it have?
Many uses. Or you can use like a normal one like this and just drill a hole in the lid. And all you need to do is just grab a clear piece of tube like this so you can see how much fluid's going through it, if it's solid or if it's got bubbles in it. And the Powerade bottles, if you take the little top cap off them, off there, the hose fits straight in, like so, and now you've got a brake fluid catch. So you're gonna get some .4 brake fluid. These call for .3 in the handbook, but with .3 systems, you can use .4 if you want to as well. There's no problem in going up in quality of brake fluid, but if it's .4 system, you can't go back to .3. And basically the difference between it is .4 just has a higher boiling temperature, so it means that it's a better quality fluid and the brakes can get hotter before this boils and breaks down. So always go .4 no matter what, just .4. So when we were changing the brake lines, we lost a bit of fluid. So you can see there, these are your levels on the side of your master cylinder reservoir, and it's below minimum, so we lost a fair bit of oil. What we need to do before we start bleeding is top this up with fluid. So I'm going to grab the .4 fluid. I'm going to make sure it's topped up all the way, topped up to the brim. Because we're going to be taking fluid out of this when we bleed the brakes, the level's going to drop. We may as well top it up as high as possible. So go all the way until you can see the oil at the top. Brake fluid gets everywhere.
Don't forget your catch can. Oh, you got to put her up.
Got to put her up.
Put her up, mate.
Going up.
You didn't put your cap on.
Just put the cap back on loosely for now so that it can breathe. And we'll start bleeding the brakes. Yeah, we can leave that open. Oh, and you've got to get in the car before we go. You're on brake pedal duty. And you get in the car.
Excuse me, while I sing you my fellow singing.
Bye. Okay, so brake lines are done. We've topped up the reservoir that is full of oil, guys. Make sure you've done that and it's above the full level because we're going to be using some as it's draining out. So just make sure you do that step. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to get in the back of the vehicle. Now you can do this on the ground. I'm just doing it up in the air so that I can show you guys what's going on a little bit easier. Now you need to start bleeding the caliper that is furthest away from the master cylinder. Now the master cylinder on these cars in Australia is on the right hand side in front of the driver. So that means we start on the rear left hand caliper first and start bleeding that one. Now this line here, that's the line that feeds into the caliper, that bottom one. And then on the top, that one there is the bleeder nipple. So there's just a rubber bung on the top of it. Just take that off. Okay, and then just grab a 5/16 ring spanner and put that over the bleeder nipple. Okay, so basically what we're trying to do, guys, is bleed the system of air. We're trying to replace that air with brake fluid. So what you need to do is grab your overflow bottle, this one here that we've made up with the clear tube on it. Now you're going to want to put that clear tube over the bleeder nipple. Make sure the spanner's on first. Okay, and we're going to be doing the 2-person bleed, which is extremely easy. All you need to do is basically have someone in the cab ready to push down the brake pedal when you say on, and then you open up the bleeder nipple, pulling the spanner down, let fluid flow out for a few seconds, fluid and air bubbles. Then basically you close it off and then say off, and the person in the cabin will take their foot off the brake pedal. You need to repeat this process as many times as it takes to completely purge this line of air and make sure there's no air bubbles in there, just solid fluid. So what I'll do is it's going to be a bit monotonous, but I'm going to show you exactly what I mean now with a bit of a demonstration, guys. So let's do it. On. Off. On. Off. Okay, give it a few hard pumps on the pedal again. Hold it on. Off. Okay, that is getting a whole heap of fluid through the line now. No air bubbles whatsoever in there. And we've got a bit in the overflow as well on the bottom of the bottle there. So okay, so now we're on the driver's side rear. Now I forgot to mention over on the passenger side, make sure that you put the rubber cap back on the bleeder valve after you've tightened it up as well. Don't forget to put that back on. It is important, otherwise you'll get all dirt and stuff stuck in there, and next time you try and bleed, it will be painful. So we're on the driver's side rear. Now same process, exactly the same as the other side. Just remove that blanking cap there and take your 5/16 ring spanner, put it over first, and then grab your Powerade overflow bottle and put the clear tube on like that. Okay, so we purged a couple more air bubbles there. It's got a solid amount of fluid in that line without any air bubbles. We've done a couple of pumps now, producing nothing but solid fluid, so we're good to move on to the front. Before you get stuck into going straight into the front bleeding process, so go up and check your master cylinder. Make sure that it's still topped up with fluid. You should still have a fair bit in there, but you can kind of gauge with how much you've got in your overflow bottle. And if it needs refilling, top it back up. If you run low on oil in your master cylinder, it will just pull air through the system. If it's pulling air through the system, it means that you will just have to restart the whole process from the rear left-hand caliper again, because it's going to put air through the system. That's exactly what we're trying to get out. Okay guys, so whenever you're under your car, there's something good to check on these vehicles. So there is the notorious rear main seal leak on the NP300s. Now they have fixed most of them in the later models, but it can still happen. So whenever you're underneath your car, it's always good to just check this area. So in here this is your bell housing, and then your engine's just in front of it. Now the rear main seal is on the engine, and when that rear main seal starts leaking, it'll leak engine oil, and it will be apparent because you'll get a wet oil leak around this area of the bell housing. So just every now and then, whenever you're underneath the car, just inspect this area around your bell housing and just make sure you got no oil there. If you do, get in contact with your Nissan dealership where you got your car from, or any Nissan dealership as soon as possible, and get them to replace it under warranty and repair it, guys, because it is a warranted part. So just a quick tip, something to check while you're underneath the car. That exhaust system is still on here. Stupid factory exhaust system. Need to get rid of it. Still don't know whether to get rid of this bad boy or not. It is risky business, but you can't get a good noise or note without removing it. So Food for thought, guys. Maybe a bit of peer pressure from you lot will help me remove it. Anywho, let's get stuck into these brake lines. So now we're on the passenger side front. So same process, just go over to the furthest one away from the master cylinder reservoir. Okay, now on the front wheels, this is going to depend on what sort of wheels you've got on the car and how much clearance you have. You can see there the bleeder nipple, it's just up in there. If it will focus, probably won't. That's a bleeder nipple, so it's pretty close to the rim. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my wheels off so that I can get the tube in there a little bit easier. Okay, wheels off, except I'm on the wrong side of the car. That's right. Whatever, they've both got to come off anyway.
Joel loves a good power tool.
Woo! Oh, Taryn Wilson. Taryn, this is a shout out to you, you bloody legend. Sorry I forgot in the last video, mate, but you are an absolute legend. Shout out to you, man. Fuck. Imagine how much harder it's going to be when you get 35s, babe.
I need a ladder first. My little leg can't get in the car as it is.
Now the other side. The side that I actually need. What up?
Oh, you know, just waiting for a mate.
You're going to be waiting a while. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So just remove the bleeder cap. And on the front, it's actually a 10mm, so a little bit different to the rear. On, off. Lucky last side. Okay, so we're onto the driver's side front now. Remove the cap, like the other one. 10mm spanner on. Goddamn scared the shit out of me. How funny do you think you are on a scale of 1 to funny? I think you're so hilarious, don't you? I shit myself. Now where were we? Bleeding the brakes. On, all the way down. Off. On. Off. Couple of hard pumps on the pedal. All the way down as far as you can. Off, on, off, on all the way down, couple of hard pumps on the pedal, all the way down as far as you can. Solid stream. Yes. Alrighty, so that is the caliper now done. That's the last one, so we've done all 4. Now you might have noticed we got a fair few air bubbles out of that one. That's because it was the last one that we bled and it had most of the air that was remaining in the system trapped in that line. So now we've completely purged the system of air. We've replaced that air with brake fluid, so it's all done. Now we just need to top up the master cylinder and take it for a test drive. And yeah, see how it's going. I'm sure it's going to be performing a hell of a lot better than what it was with those rubber lines. If you get some spilt brake fluid, just make sure you use some brake cleaner on the area. Give it a clean down. Do this for all corners. If you spilt any brake fluid, just make sure you clean off any components. As I was saying before, it is very corrosive. Alrighty, so we're back on the ground. Now all we need to do is grab the .4 fluid and we need to top up the reservoir, because as you can see the level has dropped. So we just need to make sure we top that back up to the fill line. On the side here there's a max, line on the side. Right there. Yep. Alrighty. Now we're back at the max line. Put the cap back on. I've actually taken out the little strain a bit in the top there as well, so if you've taken that out, just put that back in, then put the cap back on, and the brakes are done.
Let's go straight.
This way is way better. Braided brake lines. How they feeling, Ames?
They go really good.
Stop on a dime?
Stop on a dime.
Alrighty guys, so that's the brakes now done. You can go off-road comfortably knowing that your lines aren't going to overstretch and brake. So now that's pretty much everything done. We've bled the brakes, we've made sure that we've topped up the reservoir again with .4 fluid. We've purged the lines completely of air, so there's no air bubbles in them. And just make sure that you tighten up everything as well. So just go back over everything that we've touched, tighten everything up, because the last thing you want is for it to have a slow leak and eventually you lose your brakes, where you don't want that to happen. So guys, that was pretty straightforward, super easy, definitely something you can knock out at home, no worries at all. So I got this line set from Mark's 4-wheel drive. They made up the lines complete to suit the lift that I had, so they have to make it to suit a certain length, so just make sure you let them know what you got. But they sell this kit complete with everything you need and post it to your door, making things super easy, guys. Now, I've had a lot of questions on tyres and wheels, but mainly tyres. What size are they? Do they clear? Do they scrub? All that sort of stuff. So these are a Razor. These are a Maxxis Razor. Now they are a 295/70/17. So equivalent of just over a 33-inch tyre, basically, in imperial sizing. So they're quite a big tyre. Now I had these on without suspension lift originally. So all I had in here was I had nothing to start off with. It had no strut spacer, and all I did was just trim the guards up a little bit, take the mud flaps off the front, and you know what? It only scrubbed a really minimal amount on full locks, so it wasn't too bad. Then I put the strut spacers in the front strut assemblies to try and level the car out a little bit because the back end was sitting up higher. Once I did that, it pretty much got rid of all the scrub altogether. But I did notice, so these are a 17-inch wheel. These are a 17-inch by 9, positive 30. Now, in hindsight, I shouldn't have gone a positive 30 wheel. I should have gone maybe a positive 20 or 22, 25, something like that. The tyre has actually been scrubbing on the chassis on both sides of the front here. So I really need to get this wheel offset out a little bit further with a 295/70/17 to get it to clear that chassis on full lock. So these fit though. These can fit without lift, with lift, all that sort of stuff. So anyone asking me the question, do they fit, you know, without any lift? Yes, I had them on, and apart from the scrubbing on the chassis because of my offset, everything cleared in here with a bit of trimming. So there's a plastic panel in here, which on a factory plastic bumper comes down the front here. Now I just had to trim that back a little bit, and the plastic bumper I had to trim up a little bit through here as well to get it to fit. And as I said, took that mud flap off the back, and everything sort of went in there okay. But it is a tight squeeze, but if that's the rubber you're sort of looking for, if that's the sizing, they will fit. Now, there is a really awesome website that you can use if you want to try and check out your offsets and your tyre sizing and the amount of difference in millimeters and things like that, which really just lays it all out for you. It's called willtheyfit.com. Now, on that page, basically, you can input your factory tyre size and then put in your new tyre size into the chart. And that will then give you a graph, which will basically show you the difference in height, width, offset, all that sort of stuff. It is an absolutely ripper application that shows you everything that you need to know to get the wheels to fit onto your car and whether or not they're going to fit. But anyway, guys, that's a bit of info on the tyres and wheels that I'm running on this car. Really happy with the Maxxis Razors. So far, so good. I haven't really been able to put them through too much mud, to be honest with you. It went from originally building the car, starting off, to then doing modifications, getting the suspension lift in there, and then we got hit with COVID. And I couldn't go on the track, so I couldn't test them out. So yet to test them in mud, but so far in scaly rocks and things like that, off-road, you know, hill climbs, dirt roads and stuff like that, they've been really good. So far so good, but they will get put to the test really soon. Anyway, guys, thanks heaps for watching. If you have any questions about the brake line installation, just drop them in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more videos. You'll get notified when anything drops. And drop it a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, guys. Catch you in the next one.